All right, well, let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Coakley, the SVP of People here at Electric, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this next Elevate session, an interview with Justin Williams, pro cyclist, CEO, and co-founder of the cycling team Legion of Los Angeles. This session is entitled The Work Behind the Work, and it will be a great session today. We do have a lot to get through, and I know we're all going to benefit from hearing Justin's story and what he has been working on. If you want to participate in the conversation with your fellow attendees, please feel free to comment in the chat, disagree, ask questions. We all always benefit from a robust dialogue. And if you happen to post on social media, please use our Elevate hashtag. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about myself. I mentioned my name is Jamie. I'm the SVP of People at Electric. I've been with the company for 3 years now. I joined, we were around 50 people. Lot going on at that stage, working long hours. We are now 500 employees globally and are delivering enterprise grade IT to small and medium businesses across the country. And I think one of the most beautiful things about our success over the past 3-4 years is we've built a really diverse team, and we take DEI very seriously internally and are constantly sort of looking at ways to impact and make change at home. And so I was very excited to see our lineup of speakers and just learn a little bit more about how these individuals are elevating, their industry and the work that they're doing to change the world around them. So that's me. Let's get to know Justin. Justin, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself and give a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, my name is Justin Williams. I'm a co-founder with my brothers of the Legion of Los Angeles team. And it's been a really amazing journey of growth and learning to get to this point. I'm a 12-time national champion. I just switched over from racing for USA to racing for Belize with the goal of making it to the 2024 Olympics in Paris. And then after that, maybe jumping more solely into business, because as of right now, it's absolutely insane. I don't have much time to do a lot of other things. I'm having a blast, but I think that at some point I'll have to, pick one or the other, which is totally fine. But yeah, just super excited to kind of take cycling head on. I've been in it since I was 13 years old. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, which isn't which is in South Central LA, which isn't known for its cyclists, but I think we're doing everything in our power to change that.
Awesome. Well, we're clearly in for a great discussion. And with that, let's dive right in. So those joining us today now know, hopefully, that you're a pro cyclist and founder of the Legion in Los Angeles. Fast Company also named you one of the most creative people in business in 2021. Congratulations on that award. So I know you mentioned a little bit about, what you're doing, but tell us a little bit about that distinction and really what the Legion is focused on doing for the community.
Yeah, no, I mean, cycling is a sport that is, the majority of the sport is older white men. And when I got into the sport, I remember showing up to races and like not seeing anyone that looked like me. I had a mentor in my father, and I had a mentor in this pro rider, the only other Black pro rider at the time, Rasan Bahati. And he basically took me under his wing. And it's funny because, now I'm at the point where I'm able to give back to a lot of people that need the help. And I was always so impressed by how much time he actually dedicated to me. And it shaped me. I had some really inspirational people in my life growing up. Dave Pulliam was the director of this team called Major Motion. It was a little development team and club. And so from the beginning, I was set up to like always have in the back of my head, give back, like just like these people were giving back to me, because I've had that help and that kind of support growing up in a space that felt like there was it wasn't for us. So I spent 15 years racing bikes. I spent most of that being a pro. I turned pro when I was 17. And it was just a weird space. Like things didn't feel like, when you spend most of your time going, shouldn't this be like this? You know what I mean? And growing up as a kid and being immature and like growing as a person and as a man and trying to figure out not only who you are, but like what your value is and what you're willing to deal with. It was just like a long journey through cycling, but it granted me so much experience and so much understanding of like the ins and outs of what this sport is and also what the sport can be, right? Because there's been a lot of things that I've seen work in the sport, and whether that's happened or not, I got to experience that and be a part of it. So then, like getting down the road, I was almost done with the sport. I thought I like had taken a bunch of high like taking a bunch of breaks. Went to college for graphic design at one point, and then I figured like, okay, well, I think I'll continue down the cycling path, and I got to a point where I just spent the year on my own. And during that time that I spent on my own, I just realized all of the beautiful things that cycling offered. And I was like, if I can get this, and this is relatable, if I could get this in front of people like me, if I can just get this in front of young people, I know they'll be inspired. I know they'll have an understanding of why cycling is cool. Not only the racing side of it, but just the industry side of it, the health benefits, the freedom that the bike grants you. And so from there, I had a conversation with my younger brother, and I was like, "Hey, man, like, doesn't being pro suck? Like, you should come race. You should come race for me. We should start this thing." And he was reluctant at first, and I spent like 2 months like convincing him, like, this is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do. So once I convinced him to start this team, and I was like, "This is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna base it around. We're gonna make something that young people like. We're gonna make something that people can feel like they're a part of. We're going to make something that changes the way that the world really, the goal was massive, like changes the way the world perceives cyclists, right? They're not just like the people on the side of the road that are in your way when you're driving. Like there's a whole other world that comes with that. And he was all for it. So once I convinced him, then it was time to go find partners and like see if we convince other people, which actually convincing my little brother was the hard part. And then like getting into like going
Funny
to,
how that works, right?
yeah, exactly, right. Going into finding partners that wanted to be a part of it was challenging, but it was just really fun. And I was just going out of my way to just show up. I remember um, Specialized was one of the first companies that I like targeted, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go into your like they had this dealer thing where all of their dealers from all over the country come to Specialized and they like hang out, and I just like showed up. I just went to Specialized in Morgan Hill. It's like a 5-hour drive. I just drove there. I was negotiating with this guy Chris, and I said, "Hey man, like I'm just gonna come up, and then we'll see. We'll just have a conversation there. Just make some time for me." And I got there and I just hung out with all of the dealers, and they know me from like racing and like traveling around the country. So they were like stoked and blown away. And it was cool because Chris got to see like the impact that I had just on my own. And I was like, okay, great. I want to start a team. And he was like, no, he didn't get it. He kind of got it. He understood what I was trying to do, but he didn't completely get it. So then yeah, I worked with him. I told him like, I feel like I can touch people of all backgrounds um and places, and I think this is how I wanted to do it, right? And we had that conversation. And from there it just kicked off. It was like from there it was like every other company, once you get a company like Specialized, every other company is like, okay, like we'll see if they're investing a little bit, we'll invest a little bit. And then we started with this goal of like, bringing more diversity to the sport, introducing to the sport to people on a different level from a different perspective, redefining what cycling looked like and success in cycling looked like in America, and then really like changing people's perspective, like everyday people's perspective on what the sport of cycling and what cycling is. And from there, the rest is history.
That's amazing. Very, very cool. And it's interesting that, you started that journey after so many victories under your belt, right? And I mean, that in itself is adversity, right? And to be in a sport where there's not really any representation for someone like yourself, sounding like you were lucky enough to have mentors and people who were advocating for you, which we talk a lot about at Electric. Representation matters at every level, no matter who you are, what you're doing. You have to have someone that looks like to look up to and to advocate for you and to help share those challenges that you're going through personally. But then you throw on top of it, you were like, I'm becoming a man. I was growing up. Like that's a whole lot of adversity and challenge.
It's really important, right? Because like you don't always have the maturity to like push through things where you need to push, or have an understanding that like work is work and it's going to be hard, sometimes that is defeating in itself. So
Yeah.
like as you're growing and maturing as a person, no matter what age you are, you should always be growing, right? That's like
Right.
the only time I've ever gotten scared of like what was happening in my life is where I felt like I was stagnant in my development as a person.
Yeah.
And so you have to learn, you learn that through failure, and we've learned that through failure. But it's what you do with that kind of sets you up for the next thing that's going to come in your life.
Wow. Very cool. 2 minutes in, mic drop already on that. Um, so you've been quoted, saying there's no way I could say with a straight face to some kid growing up in a situation like I grew up that they should dedicate their lives to cycling. Can you
being a bike
expand on
racer,
that?
being a bike racer.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. Be my bike
100%
racer.
bike racer. So cycling is amazing. Like there's so many jobs that I um, grew to know existed through cycling, right? The industry is rich in like opportunity, and not only opportunity while still being able to do the things you love, right? If you go work for Specialized, you get like 2 hours for lunch, right? To ride your bike, because that's what the company is. So there's so much opportunity and so many things that I've learned. So yeah, I couldn't tell a kid with a straight face to dedicate themselves to bike racing, but for sure, just getting on a bike and getting introduced to the industry. The best thing about this,
Amazing.
about cycling, is the networking and the people that also ride bikes. And it's this level playing field where like when you're suffering with someone, that camaraderie that you have and like, let's get to the finish line or let's get to where we're going, it is the great equalizer.
Equalizer.
It's the great equalizer. So to the sport of racing, no. To what cycling isn't just your bike, 100%. And I say no on the sport side of it, just because it's been such a struggle for me, for my brothers, for the people that are on my team, to kind of find our footing in a way that makes sense for people that have families and people that have bills. And it's just not where it needs to be. And that's really one of our massive goals, is to take everything we know, all the information, centralize it, and then build something that allows for us to set up the future to have legitimate careers where they can not only take care of their families and make a living, but make a very, very good living.
That's awesome. Very beautiful. Reminding me a lot of the women's USA soccer team and the fight that they have had of, professional athletes. You dedicate your entire life to something, and to not have the reward of, the stability financially to support your family as you've devoted to that craft is unbelievable that still exists today. So it makes a
Yeah,
ton of sense.
especially we've actually taken a lot of, I've watched a few documentaries on the women's soccer team, and we've taken a lot of cues from how they approached getting the general public to care, right? They did a lot of on the ground marketing. They've done a lot of on the ground work to make themselves accessible. And that's really what we've taken and run with. And I think it's going to work every time, right? When you give people a reason to care and you're showing up and showing them that you actually care, it becomes very easy to that relationships becomes it becomes more than like transactional, right?
Right.
And I think that's hyper important for like where we are and how we're building what we're building. It's basically like setting such a great foundation for the relationship that we want to have with fans, people that support for
For
years
years
to
to
come.
come. Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned this, and I'm going to take a detour, no pun intended. But you studied graphic design in high school.
Yeah.
What brought you back to cycling, and do you still exercise, some of the skills you learned in design school?
I love it. It's funny enough, the two things that relax me the most, the places where I can be the most myself, are racing. So once the race starts, you would think it's like, for a lot of people, it's so stressful, it's so crazy and chaotic, and it's one of the only times where my mind can just go on to autopilot. It's something that I've done since I was 13 years old, so I just know what to do. I'm having so much fun. I'm focused on being the best version of myself. And the second thing is design. And so I design a lot. I work with a lot of our partners to design a lot of the stuff that Legion has. So I exercise it a lot. I didn't study in high school. I studied in college. I did a year of college at Moore Park, California. And it was amazing and not amazing at the same time. But I taught myself Illustrator when I was,
Wow.
I think I was 18 or 19. I taught myself Illustrator, and that's because I had drawn my whole life, and I wasn't super good at drawing, but I loved the aesthetic of things, and I love typography. So I did like a ton of graffiti growing up. Growing up in LA, graffiti is everywhere, and I
Yep.
loved it. I love the lines. I love the way people made things connect. And so from there, the love of that grew into like teaching myself. One of my friends gave me Illustrator. He was like, here's this program that I think you would love. And it started off with me just like taking letters that already existed, fonts that already existed, and just manipulating them and making them a bit cooler, right? And I was like, okay, this looks like this. And that's how I taught myself Illustrator. I just spent hours and hours and hours of playing with letters. And then from letters, I moved to like learning the pen tool. And then going from there, I
Yep.
just like would YouTube anytime I ever needed anything. I went to YouTube University, and I would just figure out how to do things, right? And I think that's like an important thing. Anything that you want in life, usually there's some form of stair step to at least point you in the right direction. And so that was, design is one of my favorite things to do whenever I'm stressed, whenever, things aren't going my way or something falls falls out of line. I definitely will just sit at my computer and just work on some design that I think just some design, and it'll bring me back.
That's awesome. Very cool. It's a lot of similarities to our CEO, actually. I don't know if you know this, he races cars. And I always ask him, I'm like, aren't you so anxious, like in a race, like, worried about how fast you're going? And he's like, no, the whole world
You
is
don't have time to
following.
be. You
Yeah.
don't have time to
Right.
be. It's such a intense area, right? And your
Mhm.
brain is very aware of the dangers of what you're doing. Like I ride around, streets at 30 plus miles an hour, and and we wear lycra. We wear this very thin, piece of fabric. And if you hit the ground, it's not fun. Like you feel all of it.
Right.
So your brain understands that. So it's very easy to just focus in, and like you get like this tunnel vision. And if you've done it
Mhm.
for a really long time, with anything that you've done for a long time, your brain understands like you're at
What you're
work.
doing. That's very
It's
cool. So you're not only a business owner, or you are a business owner and not just a professional cyclist. You're doing both. You mentioned at the top of this before we hopped on, there's a lot. And I've heard a little bit about your schedule. Like, how are you juggling both right now?
honestly, right now I'm just like catching everything as it comes. Like I've gone from being very reactive to having to actually schedule, which is a growing pain for me, because
Right.
I definitely wasn't a thing that I was a thing that I was used to, and that was something that I've had to learn. So uh, keeping the number one thing number one is something that I have a lot of help with. My younger brother is a very, very, very vocal about keeping the number one thing number one. And then I have really good teammates. One of my teammates, Tyler Williams, he's a Williams boy. He's always on my case also about keeping the number one thing number one. So riding comes first, training comes first, racing comes first. And then after that, I just have really good help with the team members that we have on the professional side of it, to make sure at very minimum I don't miss the really important things. But I am also always juggling, right? Every day is not easy. Every day isn't a day where I have the energy um to do everything. So it's just being smart about prioritizing, and prioritizing is extremely important. And it's also being okay with missing stuff. Like sometimes you just are not going to hit everything. And I can't say the word. um I literally said it earlier too. Basically putting things in boxes and understanding that
Compartmentalizing.
compartmentalizing.
I couldn't
Yes,
even say it.
yes. Yes, it's extremely important. Just because you have to be able to move from one thing to the next without being so hard on yourself. And I think that as an athlete growing up, I was always extremely hard on myself, and I took that over into the business world. But at the same time, again, maturing as a person, I have a very good understanding that 80% of something, I've always tried to be a
Right.
professional perfectionist. Oh my God, I need coffee.
Yeah.
I won't try to be a perfectionist, but understanding that 80% of something is good. You know, you
Right.
can work from there, and you can build something, you can change when needed from there, and just getting it that far a lot of the times is better than not starting it or not doing it or putting it off to do it another day than not.
Right. Right. I love that because I think, you have to have some sort of innate perfectionism in you, perfectionist, right? To do what you do, to want to win, to master a sport like this. But then as you've evolved and become a business, person, an entrepreneur, like being okay with not being perfect, it sounds like has been a part of that journey. And we say it all the time. I'm like, we will not, build Rome in a day. It takes time. Like, it doesn't mean you're not delivering or you're giving up on someone. It just means you're doing all that you can do today. And that's a really powerful lesson to learn over time.
Yeah, 100%. You have to, because
Yeah.
if you wait on things, it doesn't get started. And if it doesn't get started, like I've found just putting it out into the world, like whatever the idea is, whatever the plan is, whatever the goal is, having goals, setting goals, and setting realistic goals that you can like chip away at. That always like at least puts it out into the world. And if you have good people around you, then they like kind of like they not only hold you accountable, but they'll a lot of times help you kind of
Or
develop and move that forward.
right. So it sounds like manifesting goals, setting goals in general, perfectionist, we can't say that word, I can't even know, have all sort of been traits, you've brought over from being an athlete into being an entrepreneur and a business owner. What else from the sport have you brought into that business world that's sort of helped
No,
you be successful?
100%. I had a really good friend. His name is Bobby Endo. He owns a clothing company out in LA. It's very small, boutique, but amazing brand. And he used to always tell me, when you're able to bring your kind of savage race instinct and tactics to business, he's like, you're gonna be really good. You're gonna be
Yeah,
very successful. And so like it's a process, right? Like being competitive on the bike, it feels differently. But I mean, now when I walk into things, it's definitely starting to move over. And during the pandemic, funny enough, I had to put that energy somewhere because we couldn't go outside for a long time. And I suck at this virtual racing that we were doing. So I wasn't winning there. And I was like, okay, like I need to find something that I could be successful at, that I can feel good about. And that was the start of the transition for me to like start to move a lot of the way I feel, the way I approach things, um, being tactical and in positioning and maneuvering for the things that I want to accomplish. It started to kind of move over into business. And I like, and it was funny because I thought back to Bobby telling me like, when you can do this, you'll be good. And it's more just like having an understanding of when, right? Like a lot of the times it's not you have to be very patient about when you pitch something, or when you ask for something, or the time it takes to make sure that things are aligned properly before you can go after it. And so like patience is one thing that I've brought over. Positioning is one thing that I brought over. Understanding I call it panicking. Like when I'm in a race, I'm like, okay, now is the moment to panic. And that just means like you're locked in, all your focus is in one place. I've brought that over. And then just, the hunger to want to be successful and not only help myself, because if the more I can do, the best version of me I can be, the better I can help the people that are along this journey with me. So that's a powerful motivator.
yeah, awesome. Well, it sounds almost like you're training too, right? You're sort of like practicing these skill sets at different times in business, similarly how you would train for an event or a race or something. Like, how do you think about, like, okay, I'm going to try panicking in business, one way, and see if how it sort of nets
Yeah.
out, or like, how do you think about training those skills over time?
Yeah, I mean, you have to exercise. They're all muscles, right? You have to exercise them in order to like be good at them. No one's gonna wake up one day and be great at something. Not negotiation, not, you know, operations, not anything. You have to exercise those. Even like talking to people and people management, those are all things that like yeah, at first I hated conflict, and now I've had to deal with it. Not bad conflict, but just like dealing with like,
Yeah, that's
like,
my
right,
job, Justin. I'm in
that's
HR.
amazing, man. It's a muscle, and if you're not used to it, or if you don't take it on, head on. It's
Right.
it's it's hard to do. It's uncomfortable, but the more you do it, the less panic you have about it, and the more understanding you can like get from seeing where people are coming from, and like being empathetic and sympathetic to like what people are saying, and then finding a solution. And for me, like, I don't know what it is, but it's always been about finding solutions, because we're on this journey together. And I always come back to that. Hey, we're on this journey together. Here's the big plan. What can we do to get there together? And so like just exercising those muscles is something you have to do. You have to practice anything you want to be good at.
Yeah. Awesome. So what's next for Legion? What are you all working on over there? Tell me more.
We're having so much fun, just being ourselves, right? And so everything is escalated so quickly, and it's gone from me and my brother having a ton of fun traveling the world and just going like, we just want to show people how cool this is, to like really becoming this driver for change in cycling, period. I think it'll drive cycling change globally. But what's next for us is we're going to start another team for 2022, and that's always been the goal, to have multiple teams. We're throwing a race at the end of October, which is going to be like it's going to be the introduction for what cycling events could feel like. And we're just going to look at how we monetize, how we make it fun, how we keep a lot of the traditions that people love. We keep the accessibility, and it still feels like a bike race, but there's a generation of revenue, so that we can we can hit the goals that we want to hit, as far as
Right.
supporting our athletes, and making sure that they have the best possible life. So um yeah, it's just like a lot of work, and like we're trying to like grow small, because as you know, like something dangerous about business is doing too much too fast. So we're trying to keep it as close to what we did this year as possible, just with another team. Our women's team is growing, which we're like extremely excited about. We got a couple of really good pros coming back home to race with us, and then we're gonna have think 7 girls this year. So we'll have like a full squad. We'll have a full squad in Miami,
Wow.
and so that, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do with growing the events that we're doing at the end of this year. So that's what's next for us.
Well, I can't wait to watch some future documentary, on this team exploding and growth and all that you are doing, similar to the women's USA team. I've watched some of those movies, and I can just see what you're building. You're definitely going to have plenty of those in the future. So last question, we have a ton of people joining us today who I think have big aspirations, right? To elevate themselves, their companies, their industry. What advice do you have for someone who wants to start something?
Great question. Don't be afraid to do it differently. I think that the most amazing things that have happened um, in the world are things that someone just got tired of us, the system in which something was built. I think you have to take cues from and have an understanding of what you're trying to do, but don't be afraid to be simplistic about your approach and how you want to do it. Like, I think that the world can be convoluted, and like very much like, you got to do this and then do this and then do this. And I think that just taking the thing that you want to do, that you're passionate about, setting your goals and picking the points that you want to get to, and just going for it. Like, a lot of times, if it makes sense in your head and there's a simple way to reach it, usually it's that simple. Like, I think people make things more complicated than they need be. But um, pick your goals. Don't be afraid to fail. Failing is growth. Failing is literally the only way to get to where you're going. So just go for it. Don't be afraid, and you'll be good.
That's awesome. Great advice. Well, thank you so much, Justin, for today. And thank you to all of members of the Electric team and the Legion team who made today possible with this chat. And as a reminder, for those watching at home, feel free to post on social using our Elevate hashtag, and check out some of the amazing sessions we have planned throughout the remainder of today.